Hello, everybody. My name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Mark.
Sure, I'm glad to be here and be among friends and some folks I hadn't seen in a while. And Daniel and Wallace is looking good. You guys took him out for brushed him off a little bit, brought him out. He looking good. And Brad, it was great to see Brad. And John, it's fantastic to see you. And it's just good to be back. Tom was right. This is where I got sober. Well, I actually got sober in Dunn, North Carolina. I'll just tell you a little bit about that. But I think the miracle for me happened here. And I just tell you, we just tell my story. And I just will say it again. It's all so awfully nice to be here, be among alcoholics, and to be at an AA meeting tonight. And just excited about that. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and had a nice, uneventful drive down here. It couldn't have been better. Y'all have nice pavement in North Carolina. Richmond, we have potholes and all kinds of stuff in the pavement. You cross the state border, man, it is just nice. So it was a nice drive. I'm going to just tell you what we normally do, what it was like, what happened, what I'm like now. I was born in Tacoma, Washington. I don't think that had anything to do with my alcoholism, but that's just where I came from. And, we always talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous kind of having that kind of funny feeling, that just being surrounded by that funny feeling. And I was a guy absolutely consumed with that. I couldn't have told you it was fear and it was ego all rolled into one. I couldn't have told you any of that, but it was something I was paralyzed with my entire life. I dealt with that every day, every wake moment, every thought I had revolved around that and dealing with that. And that was kind of with me my entire life. I can't say that I made any progress with that ever, prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. It was just always in me, and I spent most of my life trying to find ways to deal with that. Places to run and hide to, and that's really kind of what my life was like at that time. I spent a lot of time just kind of running and hiding. I don't remember nothing in particular traumatic happening when I grew up. As I was growing up, I didn't have a childhood that was any worse, any better than anybody else's. I never wanted for anything. We were blue collar, middle class people, and it was a very nice childhood. In fact, when I think about it more, I actually had more than most people. I was actually kind of spoiled. Now I think, hey, you got to make me think about it. My dad really loved me, and he just took great care of me. I mean, everywhere I went, I was I had the best of everything. And I think about it, it wasn't best in terms of like super affluent stuff, but it was just nice stuff. Like when I had a gun, everybody else had open-sighted 33s, and I had a 243 Remington with a 3-9 power scope. My gun shot real straight and stuff like that. That's just some guys out here that know a little bit about guns. I mean, we'd go to the shooting range. My friends are like trying to shoot bullseyes this big, open sight 30-30, and I'm down there shooting quarters, and I sensed there was something different about me and my friends, around that. I remember they even looked at me funny, like, dude, you're really spoiled. And it just didn't strike me that way. I just couldn't see it. But that kind of thing kind of followed me my entire life. I did some motocross racing, and I was always afraid and timid. And motocross was it was no different. In fact, I remember one time going to the track, and the way we do it is the race that was taken off ahead of us, that line of bikes would go, and then we would kind of pull our bikes up behind, and so the next row would go, and somebody had gotten in front of me. And I remember my dad, he just, out of the blue, just kind of grabbed this guy's motorcycle and just yanked it out so I could go forward. That didn't necessarily it made me feel bad. It made me feel bad about myself, and that's just kind of how I just kind of always felt. I wasn't like, yeah, Dad, way to go, It just wasn't that way, and I always had that feeling we're here, just kind of feeling less than afraid and that kind of thing. And that's just the way it was as I grew up. And, I mean, nothing really particularly bad happened to me around that. I mean, I negotiated life, I thought, pretty reasonably, given that I had that feeling. Sports was a great escape for me. I really threw myself into sports at an early time in life, but I had some problems with sports. I had a lot of alkalogic going on. And what that is when you just want to win so badly, you'll do anything to win. Now, I loved playing games and competing so long as I knew I was going to win. And so, quite naturally, that was a bit of an impediment when you're playing sports, because there's a 50-50 chance that you might lose. And I could never really accept that. So when I was a wrestler, and when I would wrestle, I'd get up in the morning, and I'd work out more than anybody else. In the afternoon, I'd go to practice, and in the evening, I'd work out, and I'll just tell you, it didn't work at all. I got pinned a lot. And but the alkalogic part kicked in, and Every time, see, back in the day, you'd weigh in, and we used to just strip down to our underwear, I guess, I think. And there was a little scale there with a sliding weight on it, and your opponent and you would go up there together and weigh in. And I always noticed the guy in my weight class, he looked big. He just looked tough. The guy in the weight class down always looked just smaller. Well, it's because he was smaller, but my brain wasn't right on that right away. I said, Doc, if I could just lose weight and get down to his class, I know I could win. And so I did. I lost the weight, and I got down there, and I went to lock. And then the next time we went to weighing in, I looked, and the same thing happened to me. I looked at the guy in my current weight class. He looked big, but the one down looked small. And so I lost some more weight. And that went on for a while until the coach started talking to me about a condition called anorexia nervosa. I didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, I was wrestling like 91 pounds or something like that in junior high. I came in there weighing 120, but that alkalogic thing just killed me. It killed my wrestling career, and that didn't work real well. But it wasn't for lack of trying, man. I tried. I tried. The neurosis that did we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, that was with me my entire life. And I knew it. Even before the wrestling experience, when I was real little, I used to like to play softball. And it was kind of a strange thing. All of a sudden I got to where I couldn't hit a softball. And if you played softball, you're not designed to strike out in softball. It's a hit, run, play game. And I got so neurotic I couldn't hit the softball. And they started thinking there was something wrong with me neurologically. And my dad took me home and he said, all right, and he got about from here to Tom, away from me. And he had a little Nerf ball, and he said, now just hit it. And he'd throw it up in the air, and I tried with everything I had to hit that ball. I couldn't do it. But when nobody was around, I was just fine. And that sort of thing followed me my entire life. I was absolutely consumed with neurosis, from the very beginning of life. And that's just the way it was everywhere I went. I mean, I was just kind of full of that stuff. It just ate me up. Life went along. I made it off the baseball thing. But I knew there was something wrong with me. I knew I needed some relief. I didn't know that there was such thing as relief. I knew I needed some. I just didn't know what it was. Another example, that I'd go to the motocross track, and my dad would time me. We'd go on when there was nobody there. You could go up there on a weekday evening and ride around the track, and he'd time me. And I still remember the time, so it's like 1:03. Race day, it was 1:12. And I just knew that everybody knew why that was, because I was afraid. That fear was always in me. That's just this kind of thing I just lived with my entire life. And I was just consumed by it. I had just no hope to get out of that. I enjoyed getting in mischief. That was a bit of an escape. But it was kind of short-lived. And so I went along that way and just full of it. And I went through junior high. That was relatively uneventful. I had a real... I always liked hanging around girls. I mean, I always liked them. That was a lot of fun. And it somehow kind of as well had the effect of kind of taking me out of myself. But I was a little goofy. And so, I tended to, relationships I would get in, kind of goofy things would happen. I was a little self-centered too. It's hard to imagine. But, I would start hearing things, but I'd never taken a drink. I'd start hearing things about being self-centered. And I didn't even know what the word meant. In fact, when I was about 18 or maybe 19, I had a girlfriend, and we were working on my Corvette one day with the money we'd saved up for the wedding ring. But I thought we needed a camshaft for my Corvette. And she was handing me the tools, and she said, you are really self-centered. And I had started drinking by now. I started drinking, but I don't think I was full-fledged alcoholic. I don't think I could have quit drinking. Well, I guess I probably was alcoholic, to put it that way, but I didn't want to quit drinking, I'll tell you that. I had no desire to quit drinking. But I was sober this particular day. I was working my car. She said, you're really self-centered. I said, really? I said, now, and Bonnie was a nice girl. She was the daughter of a school superintendent and a school teacher. And they were good Christian folks. And I was this long-haired bum, in fact, if you're old enough to know this, I think Samara Wallace will know this. They even gave me an Emily Post book one year for Christmas for my birthday. Emily Post is Miss Manners, if you don't know. That's an insult. I was so full of myself, it didn't even strike me that way. I'm like, you got to be kidding, a book. I thought they were just being complimentary. So, I thanked her very much. And everybody around that Christmas looked at me like, fool, you've just been insulted. But it never struck me that way. So anyway, with her, one day she said, you're really self-centered. And I said, really? I said, self-centered, that makes sense. I mean, that's how I kind of feel. I'm centered in self, right up over my legs, like a football player or something. And she said, no, self-centered means you think. I said, what does it mean, Bonnie? And she said, well, it means you think solely of yourself. And I said, yeah, and your point is, I mean, it sounded it sounded very accurate to me, and I even liked it. I mean, I control myself, and it didn't strike me as an insult in the least. And she even said that. I said, what does it mean? She said, you think solely of yourself. And I thought, yeah, that's an interesting thing. And but I didn't give it much thought. And I said, all right, well, hand me the tools, and we just kept on working on that car. But I started hearing things like that, things about my character. People would comment about it, and I could sense they were troubled by me. And it wasn't because I was drunk all the time, which I was a lot of the time, but it was because of those sorts of character kind of things like that. Later on, Bonnie and I, one day we were on a little camping trip, and she had put on a little weight. And we were up there at the camping trip, and we were having a great time. I was drinking a lot of beer, and she was sitting there listening to the radio, trying to tolerate me. And I just thought it was the time to break the news to her, because I thought maybe she hadn't noticed. So it made sense to me. Since we're here, it was a romantic moment, we're all alone, I could just kind of broach this somewhat, I knew it'd be kind of tenuous, but I felt like I could navigate it. And I said, I don't know if you've noticed, and I don't even mean to say anything, but, I don't know if you've noticed, but, you put on a little weight. And well, you can guess what happened on that. It was a long walk home from the camping trip. She got in the car and left. Somewhere around early high school, I discovered alcohol, and it didn't to me seem sensational or monumentous or anything like that. I just thought I just drank it like anybody else, and I didn't get drunk the first time I drank it. I didn't love it the first time I drank it. In fact, I didn't like the taste. And I even would, dump out my beer to make my friends think I was drinking. I just didn't like the taste of it. It just didn't sit well with me, that kind of a thing. And I think I did that 2 or 3 times. And then one day, we were at this guy named John Phillips' house. We were down in his basement. His dad was a horrendous alcoholic. He had a pool table and a whole liquor cabinet. And so we were drinking liquor this time, and playing pool and drinking liquor. And all of a sudden, that thing happened to me. And we were going to go to a party that night. And I was terrified to go to this gal's party. Her name was Marianne Gustafson, and she was known to have good parties. I was afraid to go. But when we drank that liquor, all of a sudden, man, I felt great. And off we went to this party, man. I wasn't afraid. I fit in. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I didn't think it was going to change my life. I didn't think anything of it. I thought I had changed. I didn't know. It was inconceivable that the liquor had changed me. And so I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of went along with life as normal. I didn't go out seeking it again. I'm like, wow, I can't wait to do this again. But it was clear to me I would never turn it down if it were offered again or if I could get it again. And so the next weekend, came up and it was again, we found somewhere, I can't remember where. And that became a way of living for me. I loved everything about it. I loved everything it did for me. Had my own parties. That's what they tell me. I blacked out. I don't remember any of it. But they said it was a good party. And I woke up and all these strangers were sleeping all in my house. And my dad's gun collection was out and all this stuff. And the house was in shambles. And they were still there. I mean, the guns were still there, oddly enough. And it was a regular house. I couldn't remember where any of the furniture went or the knickknacks. So I had to get photos out of our photo album, try and put the house back to look normal before my parents got there, and I got it looking pretty good. They got back and they could smell the liquor, because I guess the carpet was just soaked with it. But I got that thing back in shape, and so there was nothing, there was no harm on that one. That blackout thing was weird to me, though. I thought I went to sleep, and they told me, no, you weren't asleep. And I thought I just never fully believed it. I thought they were kind of pulling my chain a little bit. The second time that happened to me, I was at a party and doing the usual, and somebody said, man, you were really kind of crazy last night. You were talking goofy to some girls and stuff. And I said, no, I wasn't. We left here at 9:30 p.m. or so. I said, no, you were here till 2 in the morning. And you were writing on the window, and the window, it was fogged up. There's a lot of people in the house, and you were writing, I love you on the window, and it was just goofy stuff. Well, I was not. See, you drew hard, but just, like, come on, man. The guy walks over the window and blow, exhales on the glass. It was cold outside, so it fogged up, and I could see my writing. And I was like, damn, I was here, man. So that was a little troubling to me. But that was just the way, that's the sort of thing that happened to me when I drank. And after that, I'll just be quite frank, it was kind of a blur. It was a little troubling. It was still far-fetched. I didn't really fully believe that was happening to me. So I can't say I was at home really bothered by that. That continued to happen to me, and every time I drank, those sorts of things would happen to me. The other thing that was always problematic with my drinking was vomiting. I spent a lot of time vomiting when I would drink, and if you're trying to kind of pick up girls at parties, that's just so unappealing. And so you're trying to wipe it off your chin and stuff, and it's bad. So I thought, man, I had to really put a concerted effort into not vomiting when I would drink. And I think I got on top of that. I'm not entirely sure. It seemed to me I did. I might not have. I don't fully remember. But it didn't bother me anymore. I think I got on top of that one. And the last real problematic thing with my drinking was I'd walk out of these parties or where we were drinking in my car. Would have no idea where it was. I mean, I'd walk on the front porch and I had no idea where the thing was. And that happened again and again. I'd try and find ways to remember, where my car is and that sort of a thing. I'd leave breadcrumbs. No, I didn't actually do that. But I thought about it. And so that when I drank, those sorts of things happened. I could dig in one. It just always happened. I loved going to parties and I loved drinking. And I also had a phase of stealing things. And so if I went to your party, I would tend to leave with your things. And if you had music I liked, I'd leave with that. And sometimes if you just had toothpaste that I liked, or maybe a brush, bar, soap, whatever, I'd leave with that. I wasn't picky. Went to a gal's party one night. I think she was a gal. And we were there. We were having a good time. And I had to go to the bathroom, and I went in the bathroom, and there was everything. I just decided I wanted to steal all this stuff, deodorant, all this stuff. So I'm in there, just putting it in my pocket. I'm just hammered, putting all this stuff in my pocket and stuff, and pretty soon I can feel myself going out. I'm like, oh shit. They're going to find me in here with all their stuff on my body laying in their bathroom, and it's just going to look really bad. So as I was going down, I can still remember trying to reach up to the sink and put the soap back on it, and as I was going down. But I think I made it, I'm not sure. Woke up in the bathroom and just got up. I had no idea if I'd been there a minute or a week. And walked out of the door, and there was a long line of angry-looking people. I just played it cool, I didn't give on to didn't anybody know that had happened to me in there. But I loved drinking. I loved everything it did for me. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'd say the first time I truly got in trouble around alcohol was when I was in junior college. I'd somehow managed to graduate from junior college, and at the graduation party, I thought as they were the alcohol at that point made me just kind of crazy. I thought it would be fun while they were the guy that was running the thing, while he was kind of giving the talk, that I would just kind of grab it. I had a fifth of Southern Comfort. I love that stuff, and I thought it'd be nice just to kind of walk up behind him and just take a few pulls while he was talking to the crowd. And that's just the way the graduation was. I was like that the whole time that I went and put my Southern Comfort, filled up everybody's little flower vases on their tables and stuff. Every time I drank, that's just the way it was. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. But that night, driving home, we were driving home from the graduation, and I was driving along, and I had this old 1969 Corvette I was telling you about. And myself and a friend, and he didn't graduate, but I did, so I was feeling pretty good that night. And he was in the passenger seat, and there was I was on the highway, and there's a divider that separates lanes that go on I-5 north from highway lanes that go on another highway, and there's a divider there. And there were some police on the other side of that divider, and so I thought, since he was over there, there's no way he'd get back in our lane. I thought I'd offer him a drink. So we rolled up beside him, honked the horn, and there's the divider. We're driving along about 50 miles an hour. So I gave him the Southern Comfort. I took a pull and offered him one, and he didn't seem to want any of it, and he seemed annoyed and angry, and so that bothered me too. So I gave him the finger, and off we roared. But when you're drunk, you're not thinking right. So we just go back to driving at like 60 miles an hour on I-5, and all of a sudden all these cops are coming. They're coming from everywhere. It's a Tuesday night. It's hard to imagine. I think every Winchell's donut house emptied out. I mean, I'm imagining those cop cars flying out of the donut house and donuts flying out of the cop car windows and all this stuff, because they were coming from everywhere. I hope there's no police in here. But They were on me, man. Now I'm looking in the mirror like, damn, my friend's name was Joe. I said, Joe, what do all those cops want back there? I mean, that's just the way our brains work. So we figured it out. So we did the right thing. I want you to know I'm not some sort of a criminal or something, So I just dropped a hammer on that Corvette and we took off as fast as we could go. If you don't think you can get away from the police, you can. And so we're going really fast, and we're going so fast we can't get off on the off-ramps. We're going by them so fast. I can't hardly drive. I'm so drunk. It seems like we're going fast anyway. Maybe we weren't. I don't know. Maybe it was like O.J. Simpson or something. But it seems like we were going really, really fast. And so we're going down the highway. He's saying, get off the highway, get off the highway. I said, Joe, I'm going too fast. I can't get off on any of these exits. And the line of cops is getting longer and longer as we're going. And so finally we get off on one, and now we're just on residential roads driving along. This is no better. The cops are coming from everywhere. And in truth, it was kind of fun at that point. And so I just had no real concept that this was really, really bad and really against the law. And my drinking, I just never got in trouble for drinking. In blue-collar Washington State, Tacoma, Washington, guys like me could just drink all the time. The cops would stop you, they'd give you a ride home, or they would just tell you to go home. When bars would close at 2 in the morning, we were all out on the streets. And the cops are right there. And I think, why don't you just pick a car and pull it over? We're all drunk. But they never did. I got pulled once going backwards in a Jack-in-the-Box. I thought it'd be fun to go through the thing backwards and pull up the window with a passenger. The cop walked up to the car and had a talk with us. And I said, yes, officer, I'm sorry. I'll never do that again. We were just totally hammered, nothing. Time and time again that sort of thing happened to me. I never got in any trouble. Well, that night, the cops got behind us, and so we were driving, and we're coming to a very busy intersection. I'm thinking, man, this is bad, because Bridgeport is the name of the road. 2 lanes going both ways. And now I'm approaching that, and I'm thinking, well, golly, I guess we're caught, The light's red, and we're going to have to stop. And then that alcohol logic kicked in, and it said to me, he said, really, you have to stop? And then it dawned on me, you don't have to stop. And I always liked to gamble. I was kind of that kind of person. And so I just ripped straight through that street. And as weird as this is, when I went into the intersection, I was a fun-loving kid. And when I came out of it, man, now I knew that I was a different person. Now I was trying to get away with everything I had. I knew, when I came out the other side of that thing, I knew they were not going to play with me anymore. I knew I had stepped over a line that was no longer fun kid stuff. But they did stop at the intersection. Thank God we didn't kill anybody. We shot through that thing, made a couple turns, and then parked the car real quick behind this guy's house. We were in his neighborhood. Jumped out of the car real fast. It was kind of sideways in a flower garden, but we didn't care. Jumped inside, tore off our clothes, and got in bed and made it look like we were asleep. We thought that was a good alibi. And it didn't take the cops 5 minutes to find the car. And so next thing you know, knocking on the door. So we came out. He says, is this your car? I said, yeah, it is, officer. Why? And he said, well, how long have you been here? I said, about 2 hours. And the car is sitting there. There's like steam vapor coming out of the radiator. It drove awfully hard, you know what I mean? It just slid right in there, And the motor's making that ticking sound that they, And I said, well, about 2 hours. And he said, no. And he got us out there, and they interrogated me, and they did the good cop, bad cop routine. But I recognized it for what it was. And so I knew not to cave in when that nice cop came by and talked. And then the bad one, the mean one, yelled at me and stuff. So nothing happened. I got away. They gave me a ride home in the morning. And not the kind I was used to getting, but this time a ride home, I think I was 18, and they talked to my dad. And they said, there's something's wrong with your son. We think he did all this. In fact, we're pretty certain. We just can't prove it. And truthfully, really nothing happened to me around that. Nothing happened to me. I think by this time my dad was starting to think there was something wrong with me. I don't think anybody could kind of put their finger on it. I just digress a little bit from there. That desire that, in the big book it talks about, Bill Wilson talked about making that boomerang that would one day come back and cut him to ribbons. My life was exactly, like that in terms of wanting to be somebody. I was, when I wasn't drunk, I was absolutely driven, and absolutely I was going to win. I didn't know what it was I was going to win, but I was going to win. And I was just absolutely committed to that. That neurosis really drove me. And all the time, I'm dealing with, when I'm drinking, I'm having a good time. Life is good. So I graduated from junior college, and my dad, he said to me, he said, well, he just told me, he said, you could be a doctor or a lawyer, you pick. And so I picked doctor. Now, I had no idea what that meant. I mean, I knew what they did. I knew what they did, but I didn't have any idea what it was like to be concerned about other people or help somebody or anything like that. I had never done anything of the sort. But that was kind of what he said. He said, "You're going to do that?" I said, "Okay," and off I went. I left the junior college, made it into a 4-year school at the University of Washington in Seattle. With that profound, all the time with that profound self-centeredness. And now I'm sober a lot of the time. I was able to stay sober. You know, the big book, it talks about guys stay sober 55. Like the guy he died at 55, I think 57 or 8, whatever. He drank, but he stayed sober about 35 years. I knew I had to stay sober, you know, at least while I was an undergrad to get through. And I did a pretty reasonable job of it. Just kind of weird, but what I'll tell you, it doesn't have too much to do with alcohol, but I was plagued with these kind of bizarre eating disorders. I'll just throw that out there. And it kind of harkened back to my wrestling days when I was a really good dieter. When the wrestling season ended and it was time to gain weight again, I couldn't do it. And that sort of neurosis kind of stuff just kind of followed me along. But I studied real hard at the University of Washington. I worked real hard. Every test, I was absolutely terrified. You know, I didn't know you could sit down and take a test if you didn't have diarrhea. I mean, by the time, I was just terrified every time. You know, I went to any of those classes. I was the most uptight guy you'd ever meet. I mean, there is no human that was wrapped tighter than myself. Had no idea what was wrong with me, and it just seemed to get worse with time. I knew it never better, always worse. So I made it through college, and that was a fine time. I enjoyed it to some degree. I mean, I liked chemistry class. The two things I wanted to synthesize in chemistry class were explosives and drugs. And so I was a very good chemistry student. You know, it made sense to me. You know, you'll make a little money out of it, or make something that'll explode. In high school, we did make nitrogen triiodide, and I'll probably go to prison for just telling you how, but it's not much of an explosive. But if you take ammonia and mix it with sodium iodine, you get little crystals of nitrogen triiodine. I enjoyed that stuff. It's the kind of stuff you throw on the ground, makes a little popping noise. And so we made that and had a lot of fun with it in high school and that kind of thing. And that's just the way it kind of was with me when I drank. I'm going to go back a little bit for the University of Washington. I had a job in a restaurant. It was called the Wagon Wheel. And they paid me $2.25 an hour to work there. And I loved everything of it. And I took all my money, bought liquor with it and that kind of thing. And they had eggs in there, lots of them. And so every night when I was working there, a friend of mine would come by the back of the restaurant, and I'd come out with 144 eggs, like 12 sets of 12, and give them to him. And we would spend the rest of that night drinking beer and throwing eggs at people. And God, we had fun. And one night we ran out of eggs. Weirdest things started happening when I was drinking. We had a case of beer, we drank that. Ran out of eggs, so we started throwing the beer bottles at people, and that was kind of entertaining. Until one day, we'd hit this one car, and we were cornered. We were cornered back in this cul-de-sac, and the car was sitting out there, and we were in here, and it was like something out of a movie. And he was revving up his engine, and Carl was a crazy drunk. He was revving up his engine, and we were just going to go revving by him across. All right, Mark, you ready? I said, yeah, I think so, Carl. So we took off. Right as we're going by, this guy jumps out with a beer bottle, flings it, goes through the back window, and hits Carl right in the head. But we got away. We had a broke window. We got away. And as we were going through the rest of the evening throwing beer bottles, I remember we were drinking some kind of beer. And we had an Olympia, if anybody's probably ever heard of that. Olympia was a local brand. Beer bottle in the car. And that was the one that bounced off Carl's head. That night got even stranger. You know, the more we drank, the weirder we got. And then we got to throwing big rocks. We ran out of beer bottles, and we started throwing huge rocks out of the car window at oncoming cars. Yeah, just that sort of bizarre kind of weird behavior just always followed me. And ended up, didn't kill anybody that night, but we did hit this one car, kind of took its mirror off, and the guy got our license number and called Carl's house the next day, and Carl's mother wouldn't believe Carl could do any of this, and she used to call him Eddie, and she'd say, my Eddie didn't do this, Mark Nelson did this. Here's his phone number. So I get a phone call. My dad's sitting there in the chair, and I get this phone call, and it's this guy, and he's really mad. And I said, wait, easy, guy. You know, I'll make this right. I can pay off this debt and all this kind of stuff. So at $2.25 an hour, it took me a long time to pay it off. And we'd meet every week, and I'd give him some money. And the weirdest thing about it, he'd meet me. In the beginning, it was real hostile. But over time, I knew what was happening because I'd done this my entire life. I started to grow on him. He started to like me, and I just watched him toiling with the notion, why would this guy have done that? He didn't understand either what was wrong with me. I didn't understand what was wrong with me. I'm asking the same question, like, damn, why would you have done that? I'm like, dude, I'm with you, man. I don't know why I would have done this. You know, I was as confused about the things I did when drinking as he was. And I didn't mention I was drinking. I mean, it didn't seem consequential. You know, it was just a Saturday night. So back to the University of Washington. Did make it through the University of Washington, and I thought I wanted to go to a medical school, but I was a little goofy. And although I had a really high GPA at the time, because I studied real hard, and well, at the University of Washington, I went to the interview, and this is how goofy I'd gotten. I told them in the interview, they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go to Africa." Now, there was no Ebola in Africa like that, but I wanted to go to Africa. I was going to help somebody, right? Help somebody. I'd never helped anybody in my life. That just seemed like a place to do it. And so these are normal, intelligent people on the other side of the table, So they're looking at me going, "Really? You want to go to Africa?" And they're like, "Well, have you ever been? I mean, what kind of funding are you looking at? What are you going to do there? Is there a particular illness you're interested in?" I'm like, "No, I just want to go there and help people." And so when that interview ended, I was on, there are 4 levels you can get on, and I was on the 3rd level. And I had no idea how I went from being a really good-looking applicant in terms of GPA to being on that level, that the level I was on, like if an epidemic came and wiped out all the other applicants, we'd take you. That was the level that they placed me on. I wasn't really sure why that was, but I knew there was something wrong. Now, I did go to the University of Kansas, and when I was at Kansas, I didn't tell them any such thing. I just played it straight, and they liked me in Kansas for a while. And at the interview, they liked me. And I didn't, in medical school, I didn't do a lot of drinking. It was that same sort of thing. Well, that's not entirely true. I drank after every test. And I remember going to the bar after the test. I wouldn't drink while studying, but I'd go to the bar after the test, and I remember actually being able to grade how fast I was losing the knowledge that I had just taken like 3 weeks to. Like I'd drink a little bit and go, "Man, I can't remember half of what I studied the last 2 weeks." And I'd drink some more, and I'm like, "I can't remember a damn thing." And that just even seemed a little wrong to me, but it was like that all the time. I was back to scratch, always back to scratch. I'm sure I retained some of it. In medical school is all right. I was having I had these character defects. I had some real problems. And one of them was telling the truth. I wasn't really good at that. And so there was a group of people that kind of caught on to that in the medical school. They were the family practice people. They're the kind of touchy-feely kind of doctors. I know a few of them that are members of this group. I don't see one in here tonight. So, oh, geez, hey, Roger, good to see you. They're good people, family practice people, I want you to know. And so I was in there, and I'd go see the patients. By now, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was just I'd go see the patients. They'd ask me questions like, "Well, you went and saw Mrs. Smith?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "What do you think's wrong with her?" I'm like, "I got no idea." And they said, "Well, does she have a headache?" And I think, God, that must be important. They wouldn't ask me that because I learned how to answer questions. I was smart, right? "Yeah, she's got a headache." I'm like, "Oh shit, here we go." But I can play this one. I can stick with these people. Where at? Well, I'm thinking, well, right up here in the front, And so. I just would really, how long she had it? Oh, shit, it's getting worse now. So I'd make up the whole thing, and invariably, every time they'd go back and ask the patient, that's what they did when they're trying to train you, and she didn't have that, you weren't even there for that reason, She had maybe a backache or something, or she's pregnant or something, I don't know. And they'd come back and say, "What are you talking about?" And I'd say, I wouldn't know what to say. So they turned me into the professor that ran the thing, and his name was Dr. Price, and he was a white-haired, fine gentleman, just real elegant man, and just real polished, and just a fine, doctor from Western Kansas. And I went and sat across the table from him, and he's reading the stuff, looking over his glasses at me, and I don't know what he's reading, but I know it's not good. And he finally looks up at me, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to play this one. So I'm going to play this one. I'm going to play the innocent kid, because I know I can tell he's fatherly. I'm just going to slip right into that sonly appearance, you know what I mean? And he said some stuff, and finally he gave me just a little inkling of room, and I said, "Dr. Price, I think those women just got it out for me." And he went back and looked at the paperwork and kept looking. And he said, "Yeah, I think that's it." And he turned me loose, and I walked out. I was perspiring badly, but got away. Those sorts of things were around me all the time. It's just the way it was, during that phase of my life in medical school. I made it out of medical school. wasn't too awfully difficult. They did graduate me, and I didn't have to repeat any years or anything like that. I got some bad grades. I cheated off one guy. I cheated a lot, but one time in particular. This guy's name was Gavin Jardine. Well, I'm not studying, man. I mean, everybody else is studying. I can't get the hang of it. I'm clowning around, drinking, this kind of thing. And Gavin was a heavyset guy with black rimmed glasses, and everybody knew Gavin was smart. And so one day I'm taking this test, and as usual, I have no idea what the answers are. And Gavin is sitting at a 45-degree angle from me, just where you can actually see his paper. I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And I look at my answers, they're way different than his. So I erase them and change them all to what Gavin's got. And I'm thinking, man, hallelujah, I'm ready to turn it in. It's 5 minutes before the end of the test. I'm leaning back, relaxing. And so I thought I wanted to just glance at my answer sheet and see what the real answers were, since I didn't know myself. Might as well learn while I'm here. So I start reading the answers, and they're all screwed up. Gavin's dumber than I am. I'm thinking, shit. I'm erasing these things really fast, trying to put in, trying to change it back. And that's just the way it was for me. I got a D. They graduated me. I was in the lower quarter or something of the class, and I went on interviews. I decided I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. I liked what anesthesia did for patients. I didn't care about the surgery, but the anesthesia looked good. So I did a residency in that. When I see the patients, I was like, dude, this is going to be your lucky day. I know you have your gallbladder out, but you're going to go on a trip. That's what's in my head. I'm thinking you're going to get some refuge. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew they looked like they were comfortable, and they just looked happy when they were asleep. And so I enjoyed that. I did the residency. Everything went pretty well in that. I can't say I really had a whole lot of troubles. I mean, I did have some troubles. Now, in the residency, I was drunk every single night, except every fourth night I was on call. But this is Chicago now, and drinking in Chicago is fantastic. This is, if you've ever been in the north end of Chicago, in Lincoln Park area, man, you could fall on the ground there drunk and just get up the next day and walk home. Nobody stole your stuff. It was all, kids, innocent, kind of college people. There was no crime. I used to live on the south side, but again, I'd drive to the north side, lose my car, and I hated that, and driving drunk bothered me all up and down Lakeshore Drive. So I just moved to the bars. So all I had to do now was walk out of my door, walk to the bars. It was great. I loved it, loved everything about it. I had a great time. Chicago was fantastic. I had some problems holding my glass, though. That started to plague me. I didn't vomit anymore. I wasn't blacking out anymore, but I kept dropping my glass. And when you're trying to pick up women in bars and your glass keeps dropping and breaking on the floor, it just throws a wrench in the gears. They'd look right there and say, oh, that didn't fall in my eye. And I really didn't know what was wrong with me. I mean, I think to myself, why is this, what is wrong with this? Why are these glasses falling on my hands? It never occurred to me. I was absolutely inebriated. That I couldn't hold my glass. But it never occurred to me. So that's just the way it was. Went through the residency. I think I did pretty well. I think they were pretty glad to see me go. I left, moved to the metropolis of Dunn, North Carolina. And I had no idea that I had any problem whatsoever with alcohol. None at all. When I got to Dunn is if you don't know, it's a dry county, at least it was when I was there. And you can't drink. So the first thing I did when I was there, I went to the store and I got 7 bottles of wine, because I like to drink wine. Wine's a nice thing to drink. So I got 7 screw-on bottles of wine, with the screw-on lids, like I was a wine connoisseur. And next day I went to work in a little hospital there, and somebody said, what are you going to do with all that wine? And I said, oh my God, what are you talking about? So it was clear to me I could not drink in Dunn the way I like to drink. First of all, I didn't know how to shag, and that's all they did there. They had one little bar in town. I can't remember the name of it, and this just wasn't going to work. I'm like, dog, man. But I don't know that I'm in trouble, because I didn't know I had any problems. So I'm sitting in Dunn. I've been there 1 week with my new job, and I'm coming out of my skin. I need relief badly. And so I think, well, I'm going to take a little vacation. I'll go away and do what I do. And so I did. I went away and took a little trip, and the hospital administrators didn't mind. I took a little trip and just got completely hammered for an entire weekend. Came back, and I felt better. I said, okay, now, on to work. I mean, I have no idea what's wrong with me. I make it through another week, and the next weekend rolls up, and I'm coming out of my skin again. I can't go another week of this. And I still don't know it's the drink, and I think it's the partying. I'm really thinking it's the partying. I just need to blow it out. I'm a wild guy, right? None of this is dawning on me. So I do it again that weekend. So I do this so many weekends. The first in the hospital administration is like, why you can't stay in town more than 5 days? They're having to hire people to cover my practice. I'm having to pay the bills for that. At the end of the year, I had no money left. I had paid all these people to cover the weekends. I wasn't making any money. So I had to find a solution. And while I was there, I'm thinking, man, what am I going to do? And I kept thinking about those patients that were sleeping so soundly. And then a light went off in my head. I said, what if I try some of these anesthetics? I mean, that works for them. It ought to work for me. So I went home and took a little dab of this and that and other thing, and lo and behold, that the edge came off of me. I thought, well, I can't do this all the time. Wouldn't be practical. I'll just do it on the weekends, because that's when I was having trouble leaving town. And so I could do it, and when I would do that, it didn't make me wild. I didn't feel drunk. I didn't get DUIs. I didn't do anything. I just sat there and just sometimes woke up covered in drool and stuff. And I don't know what, but that was better than what I had. So I did, and I stayed in town. It was a great plan. I really had it pretty much everything figured out at that point. And that went on, I think that went on for about a year. By the end of that year, that my habit of doing that, first it was every weekend, then it was Wednesday and the weekend, and then it was every other night, and it was every night, and then it was as bad as the drink. It was every day. And I just couldn't get past 10 a.m. And I'm thinking, geez, man, I'm in a lot of trouble. And long story short, one day at the hospital, they were looking for me. They were coming down on me, and I knew they were. I could sense that in the people around me. So I got my girlfriend's urine, and she was pregnant at the time, but I still used her urine. I knew they were coming. They didn't want to check me out. I put that urine under my arm, ran a little tube down in my shorts, and I walked around with that for a couple days, and they did show up, the North Carolina Medical Board. I hope there's no medical board members in here or anything like that, because they were a mean crowd, as I soon learned. Anyway, they showed up, and they interrogated me, and I gave them some urine and all that kind of stuff, and they went and tested it, and they came back and they said, well, your urine's clean, but you're pregnant. But by then it had gotten so bad that I couldn't go on anymore. And before I knew I was pregnant, I had called them. I said, come and get me, man. Come and get me, I need help. They took me off to a treatment center, and while I was in it, I still would not believe I was alcoholic. I was a year and a half into sobriety before I could even understand alcoholism. I knew I got in trouble for stealing all those drugs and taking them, but the alcohol thing was a far cry from me ever believing that was my problem. Alcohol never hurt me. It was always my friend. It was always there for me. I loved everything about it. I had no intention to quit drinking. And while I sat in that treatment center, they listened to my stories, and they said, we think you're alcoholic. And it just rolled off me like water off a duck's back. I mean, you're crazy, man. Alcoholics are bums who live under bridges. That kind of a thing. So I left the treatment center. I was very distraught, and all they said when I left was, get a sponsor, go to a meeting, get a sponsor, go to a meeting. And I did. I left, and I had no intention of doing either one for that matter. I left, I went to Dunn, and I don't know if anybody knew him. There's a guy named Bubba. He's passed now, and Bubba had an old white pickup truck, and he came and picked me up one day and took me to the hut. I couldn't go anymore. I said, I need some help, so I went to A Hut in Dunn. And I went to meetings there twice a day. I'd go and I didn't have any medical license. I couldn't work. I'd go there in the noon. I'd go there in the night. And that's just the way I did that for about a year and a half. And even that stopped working. Sitting in meetings didn't work for me. But I had been at an international convention in 1995, and I met a guy there, old Tom for that matter. That's the guy. And I went there and he'll know these people. There was a guy that he sponsored named Mike B., who sponsored a guy named Bricky, who sponsored a guy named John P., and John P. sponsored me. And we were at that international convention in San Diego, and we kind of hung out, and I thought, this guy's really kind of got it going on. And I thought, I'd really like to have that. But it didn't really occur to me. I was 6 months sober at the time. It didn't stick. But when I got in trouble, I oddly enough was living on some girl's couch in Pinehurst at this time in my life. And I couldn't go anymore. I was just done. I'd been to AA meetings. I sat through all the meetings I could sit through, and nothing was happening to me. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't doing service work. I hadn't worked any steps. Nothing was happening. So I called Tom up, and I said, well, I don't know what's wrong with this AA thing, but it's not working for me. And I realized I wasn't doing it. I was a good spectator. I just wasn't a participant. And so, and over the years, I began to work the steps, and first time in my life I started thinking about that and what those steps mean. And he would tell me things, and I started learning things. He'd say, try to think about somebody else. Try to help somebody. And I said, I don't want to help anybody. I'm thinking of myself. Man, I'm in trouble. I remember one time sitting there saying, I'm in a lot of trouble. I need some help. And I want to just talk about myself incessantly. And I know what that's like now. I sponsor a lot of people now. And one time he even brought this up. He says, what do you think of so-and-so? I'm like, I don't know about so-and-so. I want to talk about me. And the poor guy had to endure that, a lot of years of that. He's a tough guy, but thank God he was. Well, eventually, what happened was I was here, got sober, learned what AA was, started doing some stuff, moved to Richmond, to make a long story short. Well, a lot of things happened in that time. I stayed sober. I started carrying the message, started doing a lot of service work, and the North Carolina Medical Board got tired of seeing me. They turned me loose. They didn't want me to go back to anesthesia, but sometime later in Sanford, North Carolina, I ran into some people. They said, we like to hunt, ride in the horse riding that they do around here. We need someone to cover our hospital on the weekends. Can you do it? And I said, no, I can't do that. I practice emergency medicine. I don't do anesthesia anymore because I was afraid. And they said, no, we heard you were an anesthesiologist. And for whatever reason, you always hear when God has work for us, do walls come down? Well, the walls came down. And I went to work in that hospital and loved every bit of it. And from there, I decided I needed more training if I were ever going to reinvent my career. I did a fellowship in cardiac anesthesiology at Virginia Commonwealth University, and they hired me at the end of that, and I've been there ever since. I'm an assistant professor in cardiac anesthesia and the director of the fellowship and the division director, interim division director, as I always want to remind myself. So if it goes well, who knows, I may maintain that title. But today the biggest things in my life are publishing, research, teaching residents, and doing things I never dreamt I'd be able to do. I got married while I was down here. I've been married to the same person 13 years now, and a lot of you guys know her, and she's just done. It's been fantastic. I've not had to screw up the vows of that marriage at all. My kid, he was when I first started meeting with Tom at the time. We were at that day. It was a holiday at the time, and he'd play in the ashtrays, and Tom would try and repair me. It was a hard task, and I remember one time we came out. There was a sandcastle on the floor in the restaurant there, and the lady said, "That's all right. That's all right." Well, that kid, he grew up, and then he watched me work with a lot of alcoholics. I sponsor a lot of people. We started a group in Richmond. It's a very active group. And he watched that, and he watched all that happen. And he's at NC State, and he's in the engineering school now, and he's got a really good GPA, and he's doing wonderful. He's there right now. And that just shouldn't have happened to a guy like me. He should have been all screwed up because when I would have screwed him up. I knew that was going to happen to me, and it didn't happen to me. Our home group's an active home group. We'll just say a couple things about it. We started a home group, and we called it Into Action because we wanted to do something. And we did. We started a meeting in a prison. It was a long uphill battle, but it's a great meeting now. It's got some really solid members in it. We have another meeting that we go to in the receiving section of that same prison, which is where people go to get sent out around the state. We have a meeting in the Richmond City Jail that we go in there as well. We go to a treatment center. We work with nursing students. We have an AA telephone. We got a phone for our group, and we rotate among ourselves. And so anywhere we go, we leave that number. So if somebody wants to call us, they can get us, the people that we're there. So any commitment we have, we leave those cards behind. So if we're in a treatment center, wherever the case would be, so people can find us. We have because I work in the medical center, I kind of use that to my advantage. We have a program with the liver transplant people there. Because oddly enough, people get livers transplanted into them and they go back to drinking. I know that sounds surprising. But sometimes at the medical center, they don't know that the alcoholism didn't live in the liver. If you took out the old liver and put in a new one, the alcoholism was cured. So we work with a lot of those folks. And we have a lot of things we do. And that service, this service is the secret. It absolutely is. And it's been a great journey. I got to tell you, it has been a wonderful, wonderful journey. I have had nothing bad happen to me of any consequence in my 19 years of sobriety. I got sober December 27, 1994, and not one bad thing has ever happened to me. The things I screw up in sobriety, they just seem to come back, and opportunities present themselves. And that's because of this program. If I keep doing what I'm doing in this program, remarkable things come to pass. And we've had so much fun in our home group. We have had just a great time doing these projects, and seeing that prison group grow, that's just everybody wants to be a part of that thing, and all the other projects too, and working with alcoholics, and the hospital calls us when they have an alcoholic who wants to see an AA member. They call us and we go see them in the hospital. It's a great place to see patients. They call that number and we go in. This has flown by too fast for me. Thanks for having me, and really enjoyed that. Thank you.